Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 10 of the 2021 Candidates Tournament. Round 9 was an exciting round as well, with the win from Giri over Wang Hao. You can find my video on round 9. I'm covering all 4 games up here. And these were the standings after round 9. Nepomniachtchi was leading the Candidates Tournament with 5.5 points. Half a point behind 3 players, Caruana, Graf and Giri, because of his win in that round. Grischuk, Wang Hao and Alexeenko were on 4 points and Ding was at the bottom of the table with 3.5 points from 9 games. And the pairings of round 10, Caruana, Ding, Liren, Graf, Giri, Wang Hao, Grischuk and Nepomniachtchi against Alexeenko. We're going to have a look at all 4 games. The first game to finish was Nepomniachtchi with white against Alexeenko with black. This is the handshake at the start of the game and this is the handshake at the end of the game. Let's see what happened. Nepomniachtchi opened with the c-pawn and let's put the opening moves on the board. We have a Catalan and c5 was played here. Nepomniachtchi said, I was lucky that we got in a position that Alexeenko is not familiar with. Knight c3. And here Nepomniachtchi explained that to avoid a bad version of the Catalan, black has to play queen c7, b6 and bishop b7 as soon as possible, bringing the queen's bishop into the game. But here Alexeenko played a bad one. A very normal looking move like bishop e7 was actually a mistake. Nepomniachtchi said, I was happy to see this move. Worst case, I get a good addition of an unknown position. Both players castled and let's see what happened after that. Bishop e3 on move 13. All my moves are simple, said Nepomniachtchi in the press conference after the game. Knight b6 and rook a to c1. We are 14 moves into this game and it is already gone horribly wrong for black. White has everything in the Catalan that he can hope for. All his pieces are developed and centralized. The Catalan bishop is shining through black's position. There's nothing in the way on the diagonal and black is not developed. As Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez put it in the St. Louis broadcast, if a student would come to me with this game, I would tell him that in chess you have to play with all your pieces. They all want to be at the party. And yes, indeed, I'm a chess trainer myself, and that is one of the things that beginners are not very good at, completing their development. In this game, a super grandmaster in the Candidates Tournament is also not developed, while his opponent's pieces are all in the game. Quite amazing. After rook ac1, e5 was played by Alexeenko. Knight g4 was another option. A good try for black, said Nepomniachtchi, but I don't think that it works, Nepomniachtchi said. After e5, kicking the knight went to f5. And here you can play the bishop back, but then bishop g5, positionally completely lost for black, because black is not developed. White will take on f6, said Nepomniachtchi. Alexeenko did not go for the bishop retreat, he took on f5, took that strong knight. Queen takes, and Nepomniachtchi said white has everything he could dream of. 2 bishops, a weak d5 square, a weak b7 pawn, and his pieces are better positioned than black's. Knight c4 with a trick in mind. Bishop g5 was played, and to make matters worse for black I have the idea of bishop takes f6 and bishop e4. I will not go after the knight on c4, I'm playing for mate, Nepomniachtchi said. The trick is that instead of bishop g5 you can play knight d5 and then there is knight takes e3. And if you take back, there is queen d6, and this is not how I wanted to proceed. Black can still fight here. After the move from the game, bishop g5, Alexeenko took on d1, and knight takes, which is pinning the knight on c4. Here, rook d8 was played. Black has finally completed his development, but his position is very bad. You cannot go after the knight straight away with b2, b3, trying to win that piece, because there is queen a5. And if you then take the knight, there is queen e1 check. The bishop has to interpose and rook takes d1, regaining the piece. Rook takes, queen takes. So b3 straight away is not good for white, and Nepomniachtchi saw that and took on f6. Here you can play knight e3, attacking the queen and the unprotected rook on d1. Like that. But then white can play the nice move queen g5, threatening checkmate. Bishop takes f6 and queen takes e3, protecting the rook. White wins. So after bishop takes f6, knight e3 is not a good move. Alexeenko recaptured on f6, bishop e4 and queen a5. A nice variation was shown by Nepomniachtchi, which is h6. To save that pawn, then queen a7 check, king f8, knight e3. Black will take the knight, and if you now take the queen, then black wins this game. Rook d1 is checkmate. Very nice variation. The knight taking the g2 square away. Back to the game after bishop e4, queen a5 was played. Knight c3, with the idea of going to d5, king f8, knight d5, b5, and here rook c3 is an option, but it's a bit too computerish, said Nepomniachtchi. He went queen takes h7, the safest way, he said. Rook takes d5, nice tactic. Black will get the exchange back. After bishop takes d5, there is queen d2, attacking the bishop and the rook. Rook takes c4, and if you now give a check, king g2, queen takes d5 check, with a double attack. Then there is rook e4, shielding the check and saving the rook. You can try to win the rook anyway, but there is f3, and this is winning for white. After rook takes c4, Alexeenko did not go for queen d1 check. He recaptured on c4. And here e4 was played by Nepomniachtchi. He also showed this variation, queen h8 check, king e7 and queen a8. And he said if black manages to play e5, e4 and free the bishop, it could become tricky. That's why I played e4 myself. This bishop is a really bad piece, and Nepomniachtchi wants to make sure it remains a bad piece, and that's why he played e4. Queen takes b2, check, king e7 and queen c8, and Nepomniachtchi said here I stopped calculating, assessing the position as a win for white. Queen b6, queen takes c4, and if you go to f8, that was a computer move that Nepomniachtchi was told about after the game, but he said bishop takes f7, bishop e7 and bishop g8, and he does not feel that black can save this. In the game, instead of king f8, Alexeenko played queen b5, queen c7 check, queen d7 and queen c5 check. And here Alexeenko resigned on move 31. White has an extra pawn, black's bishop is not playing. White will keep attacking the king over the light squares. Black has no counterplay, and eventually white will win pawn f7. The conversion of this position is an easy task for a super grandmaster, and also it is important that the a8 square is a light square, which makes the winning margin bigger. Bishop and a pawn against a lone king is not an option to strive towards for black. A crushing victory for Jan Nepomniachtchi, who was already leading in the tournament, and he won his 4th game in 10 rounds. He is now a very big favorite to become Magnus Carlsen's challenger in Dubai in November. The next game to finish was Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces and Liren on the black side. Caruana opened with the e-pawn, and we have a Rui Lopez. Let's put the opening on the board. a4, b4 and a5, a sideline. Later white will just give up on that far advanced a-pawn. When Caruana was asked in a press conference after the game to explain the ideas behind the pawn sacrifice, he said that he would if he could, but that he doesn't understand the lines at all. Well, if Caruana doesn't understand it and he plays this in a World Championship, who am I to try and explain this move? Let's just see what happened. Let's play to move 16, c takes d4, and now there are different options. You can take on a5 with a knight, you can play knight b4. Ding said he had played this before and did not want to repeat it, fearing Caruana's famous preparation. And in the end he came up with queen c8. Caruana called this a slightly odd looking move, but okay for black. Bishop a3, and now you can take with a rook on a5, that was not played. This variation was given, queen c2, attacking the knight, queen d7, defending it, and then rook e to c1. And now my knight does not have a good square, said Ding. Knight a7 and queen takes c7, and Ding did not want to play this. So after bishop a3 he took on a5 with the knight and not with the rook. Queen c2 as well. Caruana said, I did not want to play queen c2, but I couldn't make d5 work, and after queen c2, c5 I felt I had no real chance for an advantage. Let's see what happened after d5 instead of queen c2. Then this line was given, e takes d5, knight d4, rook b7, e takes d5, knight takes d5, and then queen h5, knight f4 hitting the queen, and you can take that piece on a5, but there is queen g4. White has won a piece, but black has a mating attack. One example of why Caruana did not want to play d5 on the 18th move. And that's why he came up with queen c2, a move he did not really want to play. As said, after c5, Caruana felt he had no real chances for an advantage. Let's see what happened after that. Knight takes e4 and rook takes e4. Ding felt he was slightly better here. Caruana thought Ding was playing for a win at this moment. Bishop takes c5 is possible. That's almost an immediate draw, said Caruana, but Ding played rook d8. He had ambitions to win with black. Rook ae1, bishop f6. The h-pawns were played, and now rook 4 to e3. g4 straight away is more logical instead of waiting for a move, said Caruana. Rook d5 and now g4. Here Caruana felt that he had a worse position and he had to fight for a draw. Queen e8, king g2 and h5, a deep move and rather brilliant, said Caruana. We'll see the point in a few moves. g5, the bishop dropped back, knight takes, and bishop takes. And now we see the brilliancy of that h6, h5 move from Ding. Because it's instead of bishop takes e5, you take on c6, queen takes, then you cannot take on e6, hitting the queen because of a brilliant move. Rook takes g5 check, double check, and white will get checkmated. And that was the point of h6, h5, to lure the white pawn to g5 so that it could be taken with check, double check in this variation. Very nice. After bishop takes c5, knight takes c6 was not played. Bishop takes c5 was played instead. Rook recaptured, and now queen g6. Ding said that he had missed this move. And now black's winning chances are all but gone. Queen takes, knight takes, e5 and f4. Rook check, rook interposed, and those rooks were swapped. And here king f7 is an option, Ding said, with chances for black. a5 is another option, said Caruana, and this should end in a draw. In the game, knight d4 was played by Ding, but he had overlooked rook e4. And now it was a draw straight away. Because we get a move repetition, check, king f1, and the rook just keeps checking the king. This is move 40, and after rook c2 check, the players shook hands, and this game ended in a draw. A missed chance for Caruana at this stage of the tournament. Not winning with the white pieces is a missed chance for the players chasing leader Jan Nepomniachtchi. The next game to finish was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with white. After starting this event, the second half of the tournament with 2 black games, he finally had the white pieces. His opponent was Giri, who was the winner of round 9. Let's see what happened in their game. MVL is white and we get a Sicilian. And this is the Sveshnikov. Not the same variation as a few rounds ago. And c5 on move 10. This was not played at the highest level before, said Giri, but black should be okay. Knight a6. Let's put some more moves on the board. And here knight takes d6 was played. Bishop g5 is another option. Are you just hanging that bishop? Yes, you are. You can take it, but then the bishop is hanging on d6. Queen g6, knight takes c8, rook a takes c8, d6 and knight e6, and black is okay. That's the variation the players looked at, and they both agreed that this is okay for black. So in the game, knight takes d6 was played straight away, queen recaptured, queen f3 and b6. Giri said afterwards he really should have played b5 here. That has to be played. bishop b3, bishop b7, rook d1 and a5. It looks good, said Giri, but I could not make it work. And he went for b6 instead of b5. Rook d1, the bishop was fianchettoed, bishop g5, and it was kicked back to h4. Giri said he first thought that bishop h4 is out of play and that he thought that the bishop had to be used on the a3 f8 diagonal instead. But he underestimated the power of the bishop on h4, as he admitted after the game. The game went on. Let's put more moves on the board and go to the next moment where the players were commenting on, and that was here, rook f2 b8. Giri was very happy with this move, saying that his plan is to shut out the bishop with f7, f6. And he showed this line: if now white plays b4, f6, queen c5, then rook d8, and black is completely fine, nothing is going on. So Giri was happy with this move, rook f2 b8. f3 was played instead of b4 by Vachier-Lagrave. a6, kicking the queen, queen went to a5, rook c8, queen back to a3, offering to away the queens. Giri gave a check, bishop f2 and queen b5. And Giri said, here I got hopes, as white's king is a little bit weaker than black's. But it turned out not to be too much. Queen h4, now it was MVL's turn to be somewhat ambitious, but after black's reply he realized there is not much to be done. Rook e8. And the game went on. And here e4, which is the easiest way to make a draw, said Giri. And a draw it was. Let's show you the last few moves of the game. Lots of material was swapped. Bishop b7, b4 and queen c6. And here the players shook hands. White's extra pawn does not help him very much, and neither player is able to make progress here. After 40 moves, the game was a draw. And that leaves the game between Wang Hao with white and Grischuk with black. And we're going to see a queen sacrifice in this game, very exciting. e4 from Wang Hao. It is more or less a must-win game for both players to keep their hopes alive of becoming Magnus Carlsen's challenger. We have a French defense, and here on move 9, which is at this moment bishop e3, Wang Hao said something very strange. He said, I had not prepared this move, I don't know why I played it. Grischuk castled, g3, queen b6 and queen d2, while queen b3 is the main move in this variation. But queen d2 was played and Grischuk said, I knew this move, but it took me 1 hour to remember everything. White's setup is very ambitious. If he can finish his development, he will be clearly better, as he has a huge center, so black must play very energetically. And actually it took him more than an hour. Only after 72 minutes did Grischuk take on d4. An hour and 12 minutes. And he had spent most of his time on knight e takes d4. He had expected this recapture and had spent tons of time analyzing it before taking on d4. And it was Wang Hao who took with the knight from f3 on d4, and Grischuk had spent all that time for nothing. Knight c5, e takes f6 and bishop takes f6. Here Giri had only 11 minutes left on the clock with a 30-second increment per move. And he needed to make 27 more moves to get to the time control. Knight b3, knight e4, and you can take the queen. Black takes white's queen, bishop c5, knight takes f1 and bishop takes f8. That wins an exchange for white, but both players thought black would get enough compensation. After knight e4, queen d3 was played by Wang Hao, saving his queen, and Grischuk also saved his queen, queen c7. The game went on, and we go to move 19, where Wang Hao castled. Knight bd4, controlling the f5 square, would have taken away the option of the queen sacrifice that we'll see in the game. But castling was Wang Hao's move, and now e5, f takes, and bishop f5. Bishop takes e5 is also possible, and I'm more or less okay. But after bishop f5, attacking the white queen, we see that queen being sacrificed by Wang Hao. You can also play bishop takes d5 check, king h8, bishop e4 and queen takes e5. But Wang Hao, as said, goes for the queen sacrifice. After bishop f5, he took on f6. Very spectacular. Grischuk took the queen, you have no choice, and f takes e7. White only has 2 pieces for the queen and that pawn on e7. If you take the pawn straight away, then there is bishop d5 check, and that wins the knight on c4, wins the 3rd piece. So after f takes e7, Grischuk played rook f2 e8. Knight f4, knight b6, knight takes d5, knight takes, bishop takes check, king h8 and knight d4, attacking the bishop on c2. Queen d7, this move was missed by Wang Hao, it's counter-attacking the bishop on d5. c4 to protect the bishop, and now black saves his bishop. Knight e6, and now the pawn was taken, rook a2 e1, bishop f7 and knight takes g7. The players showed lots of crazy variations in this very complex game. I want to pick out one that I really liked. Grischuk showed what happens here on move 30 if instead of bishop takes d5 from the game, he takes on e1, and he gave a very nice variation. Bishop takes e1, bishop takes d5, and then knight h5. And Grischuk said black has a queen for knight and 2 pawns, but he's on the verge of losing. And he said if in, for example, he plays queen h3 here to get out of all the knight forks, that is a bad move because of bishop c3 check, king g8, knight f6 check, king f7, knight takes d5 check, and now the king has 4 squares, and something bad will happen to him on every of those 4 squares. If you go to e8, there is knight c7 check, and that will cost you the rook. If after knight takes d5 check you go to e6, then you lose the queen after knight f4 check. If you go to g6, there's also knight fork on f4. And finally, if you go to g8, then there is a mate in one. Knight e7 is checkmate, and that is a very beautiful checkmate. Rook, bishop and knight, checkmate in the black king. There were a lot more crazy variations. If you want to see the whole interview, you can find it on the FIDE Chess YouTube channel. After knight takes g7, Grischuk did not take on e1, he took on d5. And I'll show you the remaining moves. The balance was never broken. We have a material imbalance in the position, but both players agreed that at no time was any of the 2 competitors winning. The game was always in the balance. a3 and queen e3 check, and neither player can make progress. Black is not able to break down white's defense, and also white has no winning plans. So this game also ended in a draw. So in round 10 we had 3 draws and a win for Nepomniachtchi against Alexeenko. This was a big round for the tournament leader. And it leads to the following standings. Jan Nepomniachtchi is still leading the candidates tournament. He has now again a gap of a full point with Caruana, Graf and Giri. Grischuk and Wang Hao are on 4.5 points out of 10 games. Ding and Alexeenko on 4 points. There will be a rest day on Thursday the 22nd of April, and round 11 will be played on Friday the 23rd. And we'll see Nepomniachtchi Caruana. What a clash is that! Alexeenko against Wang Hao, Grischuk Graf and Giri against Ding Liren. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.